after finally getting around to finishing Stormblood, along with its post-expansion patches, it's time to sit down and do another one of my fully biased Sprouty reviews. Well, speaking of my Sprout, it is now fully gone and I don't yet know how to feel about that other than being terrified, but that's a story for another time. Just a slight warning, this review will contain some names and facts about Stormblood as it's too far into the story for me not to name names and events. If you haven't reached the end of Stormblood just yet, it might be a good idea to revisit this video another time, once you're through the MSQ. I already made this type of review for Realm Reborn and Heavensward, and you can check out the link in the description for more reviews, reactions, and other cool stuff. My name is Ivona from momsden.com, and if we haven't met yet, go ahead and press that sub button. I make simple guides for classes, dungeons, raids, and collectibles you'll enjoy if you're a fan of easy in-game wins. I currently cover all things Final Fantasy XIV, and I also live stream on this channel quite a bit. If you're looking for a chill-friendly MMO community, drop by the chat and say hello to us. Traditionally, the first thing to talk about is the story. Giving it a 10 out of 10 is an understatement, as the story of Stormblood is by far my most favorite one. It's so raw and relatable with its political schemes, the consequences of war, rebuilding of a whole country, and ordinary people's lives being affected by oppression. Dragons and sirens are cool, but for me this is where I truly got to feel the story as my own, making me personally invested and eager to quest more. If you're not into conquering, resistance, or political themes, this may not be your favorite expansion, but for me it was an absolute blast. On the other hand, the character growth of some individuals is causing me to rate it at 7 out of 10. It didn't stop me from enjoying the expansion as a whole, but some things like Lisa's reckless behavior and dismissive statements about other cultures and nations have made me feel very ashamed of my own team. And while I understand the point of Stormblood was for her to find herself and her own role in all of this, it still made me nauseous. Alize, who is less aggravating but equally clueless about foreign nations, at least acknowledged that she is no Afino and that her skills lie somewhere else. At least she was trying, and I can somewhat appreciate that. Tatara's adaptation to Kugane in Eastern Life has done a lot to improve this rating, as she was a blast to see every time, but it definitely wasn't enough to rate it higher. When it comes to graphics and art, I'll give it a 9 out of 10. The zones are objectively gorgeous, especially Azim's Steppe and the underwater areas, but I'm personally not a big fan of desert-like areas that look way more orange and dry than they should be in my opinion. They are beautiful, and I can't really pinpoint at what made me feel uncomfortable about them, so it's most likely a personal preference. The reason for such a high rating is definitely Kugane and all the zones with a clear and eastern touch, as that stuff is just gorgeous to us Europeans, since we don't get to see too much of it every day. Kugane has clearly been designed with so much love and attention that it's hard not to enjoy it as a player. Stormblood music for me is a 10 out of 10. In my previous reviews I gave it 100 if I'm not mistaken, and while this doesn't mean Stormblood music is somehow worse, it just means it didn't quite make me feel the way Heavensward and the Realm Reborn tunes did. There are some incredible combat songs, but none of them made me cry like the Nidhogg's Trial one, and it's hard for me to rate music from both of the expansions the same. Dungeons in Stormblood are an 8 out of 10 for me. While some are quite memorable both due to their story and the mechanics, like Doma Castle and the Burn, most of the optional dungeons weren't as fun for me to go through. I didn't particularly like the Fractal Continuum or the Swallow's Compass with its weird flashy effects that made me dizzy, and for the most part I found the lore behind the optional dungeons irrelevant for the current events and very hard to get into. They're all beautiful, and most of them are quick and painless to go through, but I can't say I fully enjoyed all of them. Trials, on the other hand, are a different story, and deserve a staggering 10 out of 10. Fights like Ammonation and Castrum Fluminus would be enough for such a high rating, but the real reason for loving the trials is the whole story about Hell's Lid, Tenzin, his companions, Soraban's trading, and all the optional trials introduced within the questline. I thought Byaku's trial with the special intermission of avoiding balls was incredible, but then I went on to fight Suzaku and was absolutely stunned by the creativity of the mechanics, her voice lines, the lore, and her growth as a person, or a bird, you know what I mean. I love the quest chain much more than I enjoyed the Warring Triad back in Heavensward, and I'll be very happy to go back to these trials and get me some mounts. When it comes to flying and obtaining it, my spoiled grade is going to be an 8 out of 10. no matter how easy it is to go and search around for the currents and do a few blue quests. It took me ages to get through the peaks, the fringes and the locks. Not using the compass while I was questing may have been my bad, but it still took me my whole 2 evenings of gameplay to go through all the zones, do all the blue quests, pick up all the currents and finally fully unlock Stormblood flying. It took a while, but I finished and I can fly now, so we can forget about my rants and settle for an 8. Just before arriving at Azim's Step, I switched from my Rogadin to Aura, thinking I may be able to experience the story in a better and a more meaningful way. Boy was I right to do that. Not only do Auras get special dialogues while questing for the first time over there, but meeting Sadhu and her tribe made me feel empowered and proud to be a Xaela. I don't think I'll be switching over to any other race in the foreseeable future, to be honest. Another feature I started heavily exploring in Stormblood is Glamour, so I decided to throw in a grade here and give it a 9 out of 10. As painful as switching away from my Rogadin was, I think it was the right thing to do, as I did manage to put her in any of the clothes I wanted to wear and make her look decent while doing so. My Aura is doing a much better job at wearing more cool things, and Stormblood glam pieces just look so gorgeous. I spent way too much gil on customizing my glamour plates, and I can't really say I'm looking back with any regret. The only thing I'm not super satisfied with is how complicated the glamour system is, so much so that I made a video that served more as a self-help guide than something for other people, but you can check it out in the description if you're in need of assistance. Now, I promised I would revisit talking about housing once I've got a house, and here I am, reverting my mark to a 9 out of 10. After weeks of camping, clicking, trying, hoping, raging, and some more clicking, I finally managed to snatch a plot in Shurgane. I'm not sure how I did it, and how no one's relocated to it before, but I am loving our little cottage, and all the stuff I can now put into it. As per usual, there are some things I haven't tapped into just yet, making this review somewhat incomplete. I haven't yet done the Stormblood Alliance raids, PvP, Heaven on High, and I haven't yet gotten myself to level my Red Major Samurai. Hopefully I'll be doing at least some of that in the near future, and if you're sticking around you'll definitely find out about it. That's pretty much it when it comes to my Stormblood review. Let me know in the comments what you agree or disagree with, and if you haven't subbed to the channel yet, now's a good time to do that. Huge thanks to the awesome bunch who's helping me create content full time, and if you'd like to join them, you can do it here as a YouTube member or on Patreon, and get some cool perks along the way. Well, I'm off to enjoy Shadowbringers, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye bye!